If you've ever looked in the mirror and you've asked yourself, why is my powder foundation looking cakey, heavy, dry? Why is it getting patchy in these summer months? This is the video for you. My name is Z, someone who has spent a lot of time working on makeup counters, and I love powder foundation. But powder foundation gets a bad rap. So today I'm going to show you my summer-proof powder foundation routine for creating a quick, easy, natural look, and some little tips and pearls of wisdom to get your best results with powder foundation. Let's get right into this video. Start with our powder foundation video by choosing what powder foundation will work best for you. Looking at different powder foundations, it's a little bit tricky because it doesn't feel like we have the same spotlight on our powder foundations like we do on liquid foundations or skin tint, so it can be a little bit more tricky. Thankfully, I have done a lot of the legwork for you. So let's start. If you were right down the middle, you are that balanced skin type to combination, whether you're combination dry or combination oily. One of the safest bets, in my opinion, is going to be something like the Laura Geller Baked Balance and Brighten. This is a baked formula, which means it started off its life as a cream and it was baked, so you get that nice smooth dry down and workability of a liquid or a cream, but it dries down and sets to a really beautiful powder finish. If you want something that is going to apply with the same ease, it's not going to skew too dry or too luminous, right down the middle, but you want more coverage, you definitely want more of a medium buildable to full coverage, then you are going to love the One Size Beauty Turn Up the Base Versatile Powder Foundation. This is one of my favorites when I want a glamorous finish and I want a little bit more of a soft matte finish. This can also work really well for more combination to oily skins. If you were dry, this isn't my top pick, but with the right skin prep, it could work for dry skin as well. And that's the beautiful thing with powder foundations. No matter what your skin type is, with the right prep, you can make any of these suit any skin types. Some will just lend themselves more to other skin types than others. One of my personal favorites, and this really lends itself from the more balanced to drier end of the spectrum, Bare Minerals Original Loose Powder Formula. There is an original and then there is a matte. The matte is still going to lend pretty much right down the middle. It's a nice soft matte. It's by no means a flat matte mineral-based powder formula, so it will have a little bit of luminosity. The original formula of the Bare Minerals, it just runs a little bit more luminous. So if you have more balanced or normal to dry skin, this will be a really beautiful partner for you. It does require a little bit more skin prep and it does take a little bit longer to work it into the skin, but if you're okay with the work with it, it is one of the most beautiful, almost filter-like finishes that you can find in a powder foundation. And my previous longtime favorite is the MAC Studio Fix Powder Foundation. This is the brand new version. My longtime favorite, the original formula, which has been out for over 10 years because I've been using it since the beginning of my career, was recently formulated back in the spring of this year, 2025. Some people like it better. It is free of talc, which means now it's going to lend itself to more skin types, because sometimes talc can tend to make the skin feel dry, as it's really great for absorbing oil. I personally find this formula to be a little bit more on the drying side than the original formula, but since this is new and I feel like this has a little bit more of a learning curve as far as the application because it requires a little bit more finesse in my experience, this is what I'm going to share how to apply and do my demonstration with today. Now that we have a better idea on which powder foundation is going to work for you, let's figure out how to prep your skin and prime for the best success with your powder foundation. And with powder foundation, your prep and prime routine is quite essential because sometimes powders are more prone to clinging onto areas of dryness or dehydrated. If you over prep the skin, sometimes if you don't take the proper steps after your skincare, you can have these like sticky hot spots and it can make your product more prone to clinging and getting cakey and patchy. So we want to really set ourselves up for success and work on a powder foundation application that really suits you and your needs, your skin type, as well as your goals for how you want your foundation to look. In the summer especially, I start off my makeup prep. After my skincare has time to dry, I use one of my current favorite APLB Retinol Vitamin C sunscreen. This has an SPF 50 plus with a PA rating of 4 plus. This has had about 30 minutes to dry down. I'm going to start my makeup routine with a tissue. And I like to start with a tissue to blot. On an everyday basis, I find a tissue just to be a little bit easier to use because I'm going to use this to wipe my brushes off with. Like I will fold to a different section and then I have a clean clean place to like dap my sponge. Or if I'm gonna go for more of a night out look, I am going to use a traditional oil blotting paper. This is gonna remove the superficial oils from the skin, so that way my prep can fully set down and dry down. That way my powder foundation is gonna have the best chances of laying smoothly for as long as possible. And whenever I'm buying this, I buy just a generic store brand. We are gonna cover brushes in this video a little bit. As a general overview, I wanted this video to almost be like a pillar. If you were starting off and powder foundation is your first choice and you don't know where to go, baby steps. This is to help you set up your success with the fewest products possible, and then we'll have a few little extra products added in to elevate your experience. When you get a little bit more comfortable, this will be how to build. For today, I wanted to keep my tools simple, so we are using 4 brushes. These are all part of the Real Techniques Everyday's Essentials large fluffy brush. This is the blush brush. Small stiffer brush, this is going to be your complexion brush. Mid-size fluffy ancillary brush, they call this a setting brush. This is great for any smaller detailed powder points. And then you have a little brush that you can use for your concealer or eyeshadow. And then I also have my large Real Techniques sponge, because this is going to help you smooth down any powderiness and perfect your finish like a pro. I'm using Real Techniques because Real Techniques is a brand that we can pretty much find online in store, and you can normally get them on a pretty decent sale. So if you are starting off your collection, they won't break the bank. To prep your skin for about 50%, if not 75% of people, your skincare, meaning your skincare routine and your sunscreen, and then blotting down with a tissue or a blotting sheet, is going to serve most people extremely well when applying their foundation. If you're someone who wants a little bit more effective, you want more of an effect, or you want to really create the smoothest, most long-wearing base possible, then you can look into adding a separate priming set. Your easiest 2-in-1 is going to be a nice, refreshing spray. I like something that has a little bit of an emollient that will help to melt down the powders. One of my longtime favorites is the matte, and then the other one I'm going to be sharing with you today is the Lisa Eldridge Skin and Makeup Enhancing Mist. You don't need to overdo it, just a little bit to add a shot of hydration, so that way it almost plumps up the surface of the skin, so that we have a smoother base to work on. If you are more normal or balanced leaning dry, you might enjoy the Laura Geller Spackle. There's a handful of different variations. I prefer the original one. I really love, if you are someone who has more oily skin and you're someone who is like me, you're prone to texture and pores, I love the one size secure the blur base. On a daily basis, I don't use this everywhere. I like to use this just on the hot spots where I feel like sometimes it can accentuate the texture and I don't want to accentuate that. So I'm gonna apply a little bit there. If you're someone who has large pores, fine lines that you want to blur, anyone with any type of texture or regularity that makes you feel self-conscious, or you just want a smooth velvety base to put your powder foundation on, the Secure the Blur is a beautiful one. Next in my makeup routine when working with powder foundation, and this is something I started doing right after I finished makeup school and I was still working at a MAC counter. I like to do a lot of my complexion work before I put the powder foundation on. So now we call it underpainting. I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of underpainting to get the most beautiful effect. And if you are a makeup newbie, don't let this intimidate you, because it actually makes your life easier, because overall it's going to require less skill. Less skill means less worry when you're getting ready. Totally optional. I'm going to use color corrector because I have things I like to color correct. You would use a color corrector if you have an overarching tone coming through on your skin that you feel like your foundation might not cover up. So some people like pink or peach around the eyes to help cover discoloration. Orange is great if you're someone who has like a blue purple beard shadow, even melasma, that can work. Green's great if you excess redness that you want to tone down. And yellow is just a nice like skin tone brightening shade because it's a neutralized redness while giving it a little bit of a more radiant glow to the skin. With the Expert Face Brush, which is RT200, stipple or bounce over the color corrector. I don't want to fully blend it out, but I just want to spread it. And by not fully blending it out, you are going to spread it out. So this product that's sitting on the skin right now, it's going to be a little bit thinner so it can dry down a little bit more quickly. And also it's going to allow it to get a little bit more mileage. This is totally optional, but if you really want to go on the underpainting and you have fallen victim to the liquid blushes, if you've tried it and you just find they're way too impactful, the first 3 that come to mind are the Rare Beauty, the e.l.f., and the Juvia's Place. They are beautiful. They have the most gorgeous nuanced shades, but such a small amount goes such a long way. Since you need such a small amount, I can get very heavy-handed. So they just kind of sat in the drawer because I opted for a powder blush. Now that I'm letting my color corrector dry, I'm putting a single dot in the back of my hand and I'm I'm gonna start by using my liquid blush on my cheeks. If you get heavy-handed, blend it out to the best of your ability, but if it still feels a little too heavy, don't worry. Just something that I don't feel like a lot of people share about. When we are starting off with our makeup, doesn't matter if you are starting off with your makeup as a teenager, somewhere in the middle of your life, or if you might be retirement age or older and you've never worn makeup, and now that you've got extra time, you want to just to sit down and take a little bit of time to practice self-love with your routine. There's so many different products in this makeup pond that we have where it can be overwhelming. This shade is kind of blending in with the natural redness that I have. So I'm gonna take a little bit more and I'm gonna build it up, because this is gonna further help me to demonstrate how to course correct or troubleshoot when you run into an issue. The shade I'm using from Rare Beauty is called Hope. As I start blending, it's like the product is just spreading, and it keeps spreading, get a little overwhelming. Get it in the place you want it. If it's a little heavy, don't worry. We'll come back and fix it. If you are someone who wants to conceal over top of a powder foundation, you can. I find that's a little bit of hot water, and it's definitely more of an expert tip. You definitely need to know the right workaround. So I'm gonna start with my regular concealer over my face. Since I do have redness, my face is darker than my body. So I like to match my concealer shade to my skin tone. So for my concealer, I match the back of my hand most of the time, because you can see my body versus my face is much lighter. This will help me to create balance with the different tones of my makeup. My concealer is going to match my body, create a natural highlight. And this highlight is going to help me create balance from beneath my powder foundation. Where you apply this is personal preference. I like to apply it to the places on my face where I want to brighten. And I tend to like to brighten up the inner portion of my face. If you are someone who is going through a gender affirming journey, I like to keep the light on the inner portion of the face. That way it creates more of a heart shape. So you can kind of see, here's the base, we round up, and then it comes to a point, and that's going to create the illusion of a slightly smaller, more petite face. And it's also going to add like this light to the very center of the face, a nice feminine brightness, a little cheekiness to your makeup look. Same expert face brush, wipe it off on that tissue, wipe off that excess blush pigment, and we are going to start bouncing over. Where you dotted your product on, you might find it's starting to dry. On the chin where I have like these little stripes where you can see where I striped my product, do not fear, we have a trick for that. I'm just getting my concealer blended out. I'm gonna go back to that mist. Again, you can use so many different types of mist. I'm using the Lisa Eldridge. Now is where that sponge comes into play. You have dampened the surface, which is almost reignited these creams. You've breathed in a second life to them. So now you can work and spread them out. And your sponge is going to be your little powerhouse, because where you have a large surface area and this more porous absorbent consistency, it's going to absorb some of the product while you blend it out. You should be looking a lot more balanced. Now, again, powder foundation. I am using the MAC Studio Fix Powder Plus Foundation, and this is in the shade NC13. It's not my best shade, it's the shade I was matched to in store, but since we tried this little trick with brightening under, it's gonna give it a new life. So I'm gonna pick it up on the Real Techniques RT400, which they call a blush brush, but large fluffy brush. It's gonna help me apply a thin layer and build up as needed. Working the product into the bristles of my brush, start in the middle of my face where I want the most coverage, and I'm almost using this as a setting powder to set over the liquid we just applied, lightly bouncing over with that product. It's already helping tone down the blush and the brighter concealer. Dip in and keep repeating until I am satisfied with my level of coverage. After I set down any of my liquids and creams, this is when I like to go through and start adding a thin veil over the skin. I don't want to call it a layer, because a layer is going to feel a little too heavy for our summer approach. Summertime, we're more likely for our skin to be exposed to things that's not in the winter, like sweat, humidity, or rain. So I like to add a thin veil. And since the shade is not white, my perfect shade, I am going to blend it down onto my neck. I'm going to work this final layer into, and I'm going to go through and buff. Even though you're using your powder foundation, you're creating a nice perfected look. It's not going to look heavy. It's not going to look powdery. You can build it up to a place that you are happy with. For me, that's here. And blending it onto the neck is just gonna help things feel more cohesive. Now we're gonna finish the look. I like to add a little bit to the eyes. When I'm doing a powder foundation, especially for summer, I like something easy. Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize in Pillow Talk Real Techniques RT 300 Deluxe Crease Brush. So just a tiny bit of product that's right over my eyelid. I like using a cream shadow that dries down. It's gonna create contrast as far as texture, and the contrast is going to help the powder foundation look and feel less powdery, because now you're gonna have a little bit more of a creamy depth on the eye that's set, and also it's really easy. I'm gonna move on to embellishing my skin and finishing everything off with powder. After doing my complexion, I like to add my highlights in the MAC Mineralized Skin Finish in the shade Lightscape Real Techniques RT 402. This is what they call a setting brush. I've always loved this for highlight, just on the very high points. If you are someone prone to stir, getting sweaty, getting oily, keep your glow more targeted. If you're someone who's more dry, then you can be a little bit more free. I also like to take a little bit here on the inner corner, and the size of this brush is great. I like to use bronzer, especially for the summer. We can really live our unabashed bronzed fantasy. Laura Geller Baked Bronze and Bright in the shade Fair. This is one of my favorite more neutral to cool tone bronzers. I'm gonna go back to my powder foundation brush. Work it into the hand. Works with powder so beautifully, and it has an extra little trick. If you're applying any of your Laura Geller Baked products and it ever feels powdery, apply it to the skin, mist it with your spray, and that will reactivate that cream formula it was originally in and just bring a new life to it. It's almost like it blends itself out when it interacts with moisture. And I also took a little bit of my bronzer through the eyes. I just like to add a little bit of life back to the skin. I'm gonna use one of my favorite also baked formulas. This is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush in the shade Sublime Flush. This is my perfect summertime glow. It's a nice coral pink with a lilac glow. I always like to take a little bit right over there, over the nose, and then I always go back in for a second layer. And then since it's summer, I'll sometimes just take some just on the body to add a cohesive glow. We are going to use our mist. Give it a little pat over. Mascara. In my personal everyday routine, especially for summer, I like to keep lips pretty easy, so I'm gonna use one of my favorite lip stains. And something I like to do, I like to apply it just to my lower lip and then go back in with my little expert crease brush and blend it out. If you feel like you need a little bit of something anywhere else, this is where you can go through, make it your own. I always like to go back in and add just a little bit more powder foundation, because if you got carried away somewhere or if you need to retouch, this is really easy. So if you need to retouch, have your sponge or even clean brush just tap over, and then you can go through, retouch anywhere you need to. If you're someone who's more on the dry, dehydrated side, these little balms are so handy. This is the Baume Essential from Chanel. The one I'm using is a limited edition shade, but there are so many different little sticks with almost this waxy texture. If you are someone who finds your powder foundation is starting to look crinkled or heavy, you can use these balms with your finger. I wouldn't do it from the stick because that can disrupt it, but you could use these balms to smooth things out, and then you can even use a little bit on your lips. This is such an easy thing to keep in your bag to add a little bit of gleam to the skin whenever you want to, and to refresh. This also works really well under the eyes if you get a little bit of crinkling. And if you're in a pinch, you can always use your classic Aquaphor lip balm to smooth things out. That is going to conclude today's video. My last step in my everyday routine is always fragrance. For the look I'm wearing today, I am using Jo Malone's English Pear and Sweet Pea. I hope you found this summer-proof powder foundation and mini routine really helpful. If you've tried any of the tips, or if there's anything that you're keen to try in your next powder foundation routine, let me know. Until we see each other again, I hope you're taking care of yourself wherever it is you are in the world. Bye, y'all.